Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, we're going to be talking about what do tenants care about most, and also how can we get the best bang for our buck when it comes to providing adequate amenities that attract tenants, but also without breaking the bank. So, without further ado, let's get into it. So, in terms of what tenants care about the most, it depends on which tenants, right? So, as for example, a single family is going to care about different things than a student tenant, right? For example. So, let's talk about what each of these groups are going to value, starting with single families. So, a single family is going to want an adequate number of bedrooms and bathrooms. So, for example, generally that means at least three bedrooms, right? If we think about single families, they generally have two kids and a couple of parents, and so the parents can share a room. However, they probably will want, if possible, for each child to get their own bedroom. Now, if they're a really, really big family, this might not be the case. They might have just accepted the fact that, hey, we have six kids, some of the kids are going to have to share rooms. But when it's generally possible to get three bedrooms, a single family is probably going to choose that over a two bedroom, right? Or same with a four bedroom. If they get a four bedroom or three bedroom for around the same price, everything else being around equal, then they're likely, if they are able to, they're more likely to choose the four bedroom house, because having an adequate number of bedrooms and bathrooms is going to be key, right? They would also prefer to have at least two bathrooms, right? At least maybe one bedroom bathroom for the parents and one for the kids would be nicer than the whole family just sharing one bathroom. Now, that's not always possible for everybody, but there's enough single family homes out there that are going to have that must have list. And if they're priced reasonably for what they are, the family is going to pay it if they're able to. The next thing they care about is a storage area with a garage, right? And a garage, because most of the time, single families are going to have cars, especially depending on which area it is. They're generally going to have a car or even two cars. So, having a nice garage where they can park their cars, where their cars can be safer and warmer in the mornings, is going to be better. Um, Also, having a storage areas is going to be key for a single family as well, because especially with kids, oftentimes we end up getting a lot of things. And I mean, I think Americans in general are known for hoarding and having a lot of items, but especially Americans with kids, even more so. Right, and some people from other places as well. I know, I could do a bit better with the hoarding situation as myself, but I think that's a general thing. I know consumerism is a big thing, and so having good storage areas is going to be a key for single families. The next one is a good school district, and this especially applies. If this is a place in the U.S., having a good school district is very important and is going to add value. If you live in a place where every school is about the same and there's not really a certain school that's like better than another school necessarily, then maybe this doesn't matter as much, assuming that every neighborhood is going to have some school district. But if there's certain places in a city, certain neighborhoods that have better schools than others, then that's absolutely going to add value, right? A single family may, in a lot of cases, be willing to pay hundreds of dollars per month extra to you to rent out a place where they're going to be able to send their kids to a better school district, right? If they're able to afford that, which I know not everyone can, but if they're able to afford that, they're going to do it. It's going to be worth that value to them, because paying that extra few $100s is certainly a lot better than sending their kids to private school. Private school costs a lot more than a few hundred extra dollars every month on your rent. They also care about low crime rates, right? They do not want their kids to have to, worry about their kids getting shot up at their school or worry about their kids being kidnapped or things like that. And although this can happen regardless of where you live, there's definitely places where the crime rates are higher, and that's going to be one of their top priorities is to minimize the chances of something horrible happening to their children. So that's definitely a big one. Having low crime rates is another thing that for a lot of single families, especially families that are middle class and up, they're easily willing to pay hundreds of extra dollars in exchange for a lower crime rate, right? Because you can't put a price on safety for those that can afford it, right? They're going to absolutely do that. Also, having a good living and dining room area is going to be key, right? Families are going to eat there most nights. They're going to spend time as a family in their living room. And so if there's not really a very good living room or a nice kitchen and dining area, then that could be a drawback for a family to do. So yeah, so there we go. That's what single families are going to care about the most, are those main things. Okay. Let's move on to students. They are going to care about very different things. So, the first thing that students care about, probably the main thing students care about, I would say, is location. A location that is close to their school. And not just close to their school in terms of, oh, it's under 20 kilometers, but as a location where it's easy to either get on a bus route and get right to the school, or walk and get right to the school, that sort of thing. There's a lot of times when student tenants are going to look up the address or look up the nearest intersection of the address right away before even deciding if they're going to go for a showing or not at that place, and look and see, okay, how long would it take me to get to school every day? Would it be easy to walk there? Would it be a nice easy bus ride? Or no, maybe there's three different connections I'd have to get to, and so even though it's physically close to the school, it would take me over an hour to get to and from school, so I'm going to look elsewhere, for example, right? And so making sure that not only the location is close to the school, but also that they can get there on a bus route or by walking. Now, there might be an exception to this for some students, right? Students who go to really, really elite schools with very, very wealthy parents might not feel that way at all. They might have cars and, it might not matter. However, in my experience, most students are not going to have cars. They're already spending so much on tuition. A lot of students are taking out student loans because their parents can't afford to shell out all that money for school necessarily. They're working part-time jobs as well as going to school. And so for the most part, if students are able to save money by just choosing a place that has a nice bus route that's going to cost a lot less money than a car, they're going to do that, right? Also, a lot of international students, even though they do often come from wealthier families, if they're international, they may not have a driver's license in the US or in Canada or wherever it is they're going to school. And so they're also relying on the bus, right, or walking or things like that. And so even for those students, having a bus route or walking is key. So it does depend a bit on the school. If it's a school where a bunch of very wealthy people go and all these students are driving really fancy, expensive cars, then having a bus route wouldn't matter to them. But in general, for most students, for most cases, having a good bus route that's easy to get to matters, or being able to walk to your school matters, and it's a huge selling point for students, and that will cause students to pay extra money because that extra money is a lot less than the extra money they would have to pay in order to go get a car or something like that to make up for how far the place is, right? And that's the main reason students are going to choose to live in a rental as opposed to living with their parents, especially domestic students, is they want to be closer to their school. They want that convenience, so that's important. Another thing that's important is having a furnished space, or at least a partially furnished space. And this is because students are not usually going to stay in the place for that long. Some students are going to stay for 4 months to do a quick work term, and then they'll be moving somewhere else. Some students want it for, the 8 months throughout the year, but during the summer, they're going to go back and stay with their parents, things like that. And so if they have to every 4 to 8 months deal with, you know, buying furniture, building the furniture, putting the furniture in a storage unit during the summer, and then going back to the storage unit, getting the furniture back, doing all this stuff, doing all this running around. Oftentimes it's worth it to them to just pay a little bit extra every month to not have to deal with that headache. Right? It's not even so much about the value of the furniture or how much it'll cost you. It's about the convenience for them of not having to go through all that work, right? For you, it's not that much work. It's right, just buying furniture, building it, making sure it's good to go, and replacing the odd piece of furniture once in a while if it doesn't hold up or something like that, so that those students don't have to purchase furniture, run around to go get it, build it, all that stuff. Because furniture, it's big, it's bulky, it's inconvenient. And so, I mean, that's why it's so hard to get rid of furniture, and why a lot of furniture goes for such low prices on like Facebook Marketplace, Kijiji, places like that, because it's just inconvenient. And so if you can take away that inconvenience factor for students, then they will be happy with that. They'll be more likely to rent your place and want to do the place. Also, too, students would usually prefer to live in shared accommodation in order to pay a fraction of what it would cost them to get an apartment or house for themselves. Now, this does depend a bit on the students, right? I mean, if we're talking about Harvard students, then maybe that's the case. Maybe it's not the case. I'm not sure, all right? Because Harvard's such a crazy expensive school, right? Very elite, very expensive school. But in general, for most schools, most students are going to prefer to, rather than paying $3,000 a month for rent, they would prefer to pay, say, $800 to $1,000 for rent, so a fraction of that cost in order to just get a room in a house, as opposed to getting a full apartment for themselves, or a full house for themselves could easily cost 3,000 or more per month. Also, certain amenities and conveniences are key. So if there is on-site laundry, so they don't have to go on the bus route and go to a laundromat for laundry, that's going to be key for them, right? That's a lot easier than having to go to a laundromat. So even if it's shared, right, having on-site laundry that they're able to use, and maybe they have to wait for someone else to finish using it first sometimes, but they still have something right in that house, in that shared accommodation house, that they can do their own laundry with. Having a nice dishwasher could be a selling feature as well. Perhaps not enough of a selling feature to charge extra for it, but if the house already has a dishwasher, that could be nice for them as well, to not have to hand wash all of the dishes, right? And things like that. Having other things that just make everything more convenient and easier is always a nice thing. Now, it is important to differentiate between what is going to be a nice thing that might be a little perk versus a big perk, right? So, for example, a big perk, location, right? Location is going to be like a make or break factor in terms of what students are going to choose. Even a furnished place versus an unfurnished place, that could be a deciding factor. Whether or not a place has a dishwasher or two fridges or things like that, it would be absolutely nice if they did, but it's not necessarily going to be a deciding factor. And, I doubt students are going to pay an extra $50 a month, just to have a dishwasher there, for example. However, if there's two places that are relatively equal, but one has a dishwasher and one doesn't, maybe they'll choose the one with the dishwasher, right? There's other things that could be of slight perk to students, right? If it's a nice newly renovated space, I'm sure students would prefer that. Most young people do prefer like the nice modern aesthetic. However, are most students going to be willing to pay a bunch extra because it's a nice newly renovated place, the way that a single family might? Probably not, right? Probably, since it's somewhere they're only planning to stay for 4 to 8 months. If they can save a bit of money by living in somewhere that's a bit more old and dated, a lot of students will be willing to do that. Maybe not every student, right? And maybe it does depend a bit on how much extra it would cost, but oftentimes that is going to be the case. All right, so now let's talk about what working professionals want. So, the main thing that working professionals are going to want is to be close to work. Now, this does depend on the city, whether or not this would mean like a bus route or whether this would be a car. I think generally, for the most part, a working professional is going to have a car, and it just needs to be close in terms of getting there by car. However, if it's like New York City or something like that, where, perhaps they have a phenomenal transit, that might not be the case, right? There's certainly working professionals I know who are making a lot of money and could afford a car, but choose not to get one in a place like that where the public transit is so substantial. So that is something as well. But they do want to be close to work. They also may want to be somewhere more modern with more new and innovative amenities, somewhere like that, somewhere they can entertain. You know, a place with their own space. A working professional is less likely to want shared accommodation or something like that. However, a working professional isn't going to care as much about, a good school district or a lower crime rate or things like that. If it's a very high crime rate, that's no good. A working professional isn't going to want that either. But having, the best school district and like the lowest possible crime rate ever may not be on the top of the priority list for a working professional the same way it would be for a young family, or even for a couple, right? And that's not to say that every couple is going to eventually have children. However, most of the people who are thinking of having children at some point in the future are couples, right? As opposed to like a single working professional, for example. And that's not to say that no working professional is can ever have kids. They have to have a partner to have kids. No, but in terms of in practice, how often does that happen? It's going to happen less often, right? More people are going to have kids whilst they're a couple, as opposed to having a child if they're a single working professional, right? So there is that difference there in terms of like the numbers. But of course, either one could end up going either way. It just depends. So for a couple that's looking to have kids in the future, even if they don't have any kids just yet, if they're looking to have kids in the next 3 to 5 years, in terms of what they might want, in terms of what they will want, it's going to be more of like the single families, because that is what they're looking towards for their future. So they are going to be looking at crime rates, the school district, things like that, because they're looking to start a family soon. Whereas a working professional that isn't really thinking about that at this point and is just looking to rent somewhere um, for the time being to further their career isn't going to worry about that as much. Now it can be hard to distinguish too, and of course we don't want to ask people about their future plans for children, but what we do need to know is that there are going to be both, right? There's going to be people who are going to have their goals to be working professionals for the foreseeable future. And there's other people who are really thinking about starting a family and thinking about that in the future. And we don't need to know who's who. We just need to know that both are out there, in the place that we are looking to invest somewhere. And so it will appeal to someone, right? That's the important part. But yeah, there we go. Those are some things that working professionals, students, and single families are going to care about most and will see the most value in. So good work today, everyone, and we'll see you next time. Bye, everyone.